2 weeks ago in Bahrain, I met a king in his palace, an American admiral on his ship, and a Jew who cared for the only synagogue almost single-handedly. And they all said the same thing. They said, no one believed the things happening here are possible. And they were wrong. The things that are happening exactly because people believed. Because today there are leaders in the Middle East who believe we can change history together. In the past 4 months, Israel opened embassies and offices in the UAE, in Morocco, in Bahrain. We've turned the cold peace with Egypt and Jordan into a warm peace. We signed economic and civil agreements, and we greatly strengthened our relations with the European Union and with our neighbors in the Mediterranean. His Highness Sheikh Abdullah and I have become friends and partners. Israel reserves the right to act at any given moment in any way. That is not only our right, it is also our responsibility. Iran has publicly stated it wants to wipe us out. We have no intention of letting this happen.
I am honored to host Foreign Minister Lipid, Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah, to review the progress that's been made in the past year in the normalization of relations and what more we can do together to shape a more peaceful and prosperous region. The UAE-Israel relationship has, I think it's fair to say, flourished this past year. This May, Israel opened an embassy in the UAE, the first it has ever had to a Gulf nation. And a few days ago, Israel's new ambassador to the UAE presented his credentials. In July, the UAE opened an embassy in Israel, the first Gulf state to take that action. In addition to these diplomatic strides, the people-to-people ties between the two countries are also thriving, even with COVID. Direct flights are now connecting Israel and the UAE. Tourists are seizing the opportunity. Around 200,000 Israelis have visited the Emirates this past year alone. We strongly support these historic steps, and we're committed to continue building on the efforts of the last administration to expand the circle of countries with normalized relations with Israel in the years ahead.
My dear friend Yair Lapid, the Foreign Minister of Israel, myself, in DC is a strong commitment of the United States in building bridges, yes, but building bridges between two successful nations, but also two successful nations which are committed and devoted for further development, changing the narrative in the region, especially among our youth, towards a more positive one. Our entire effort towards the future should be based on how can we make our people respect and admire good successes in the region. Unfortunately, in the last few decades, we haven't seen many of those. And what I believe the United States is telling the rest of the world in embracing the Emirates and Israel is that the United States is serious about changing this narrative in the region. And thank you for that.